Welcome back to the Spacebook, talking all out there entertainment, getting together, comparing what we've watched or what's made our radar to show our findings here, and most importantly, as always, to take the slash out of all out there entertainment. And they don't come much more out there than Ian David Diaz. Hello, mate. How's it been? How's it been this week?
It's been all right. As I said, I've been working as always.
On the grind.
Yeah.
Not grinder. On the grind.
Not on the grind. Not on grinder. No. Yeah.
Don't do what I did. No. Well, I'm happy to say, Ian, that we can catch up again on TV, movies, comics, and everything in the geek world. The week in geek. People seem to like the last one, but these casual catch-ups that we've been having. So it's not just us this time, though. We have somebody else. We've got an extra panelist who's been game enough or daft enough to come and join in. And this time, I know it's Jon Youlden. Now, we've spoken to you before, John, haven't we, over on the Doctor Who stuff? But it's the first time we're going to find out a little bit more about what you like to watch. First of all, first things first, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to yourselves, guys. How you doing? All right?
All right. Doing fine.
Good.
Doing fine. Yeah, out in hyperspace.
What happened in 2024 according to movies?
Oh. What happened in 2024 according to
hold
movies?
On. So when was Blade Runner?
What are you talking about?
When was Blade Runner? 2023, right? Was Blade Runner 2023? Or was it 2020? 2022?
I think it.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I think it is.
Movies.
Right. I think it might be 2024.
2024 in movies. What happened according to the history of movies in this year?
Because you're going to like this. It's a great question, and I have got an answer here for you, and I've got some answers. So these are some movies that were set in 2024. First of all, there's a movie called A Boy and His Dog, that is an apocalyptic movie from the early 70s, I believe, around 71, 72. Does it star Warren Beatty, somebody like that? This is where people find out that we have the depth of our geeky knowledge actually doesn't really go.
No, it doesn't go that far.
Yeah.
I can see the poster. I've seen the poster. I can picture it in my mind's eye, John, and you'll be getting it on screen right about now. But it's very, very colourful, very 60s. It's lots of geometric patterns, but there's some figures and things there as well. It's all of that time of the Planet of the Apes time. Have you ever seen that movie?
Not seen that one. No.
I've heard of it, though.
Let me guess, Disney own it now, I bet.
Yeah. So in other words, right, we're meant to be we're not even meant to be alive now, according to that movie. We're all meant to be dead, and it's only meant to be one man and his dog. That's it. But we're alive. So.
And the other big geeky film that I know that you both have seen, probably multiple times, just like me, is Highlander 2. That was set in 2024 as well. Highlander 2: The Quickening, to give it its full name. Do you remember that one, John?
I'm trying to forget it. I had a lot of therapy to try and get that one. Thanks, Dan.
It hangs around like a bad smell, doesn't it? Over the years, it has sort of grown on me, though, Ian. I have to say.
I saw it a couple of years ago, and I still thought it was shit. Honestly, just thought it was absolute rubbish. It really was. So I wish it never happened because it just destroyed my memory of the first one, so
because the director, he was so sick of it sort of dogging his career, hanging around like a bad smell, that about 3 years later, so it was released in 91. In 94, he got Christopher Lambert and Virginia Madsen back, and they filmed extra material to put into the what they call the Renegade edition of the film, to just make it make some sort of sense and hang together as a thriller in any real sort of palpable way, with a modicum of success, I have to say, but it still only really raises it up to average level, John. Yeah. You ever seen the Renegade edition, Ian? You ever caught that one?
I have, and the thing, it still doesn't explain why Sean Connery turns up, and they don't explain why he turns up, and then he disappears, and don't explain why he disappears either. It really doesn't.
It's very, very confusing, isn't it, Roy? Very confusing.
Is that the? I haven't seen it in years, but is that where they're bound by a ring or something like that?
No, we find out that they're from another planet.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Change the law of it all.
Yeah. Change the whole.
Well, they drink. Don't they drink some fluid of some sort? And when they drink it, all this magic sort of swirls around them when they're on the planet of Zeist. That's in the original version, but you don't get any of that in the Renegade edition. It goes back to the director's original idea for it, which is nothing to do with aliens at all.
No.
And I can't quite remember how they get bonded together in that one. It doesn't make a great deal more sense, and it's 100%. Just as fleeting, the explanation on screen. It's I wouldn't say it's an essential, but if Highlander 2 is unfinished business for you and you're going to struggle to make it through 2024 without it, then I suggest that if you must rewatch it, go and get hold of the Renegade edition.
It does make you wonder, though, how a film like that, with such a great premise, could end up being completely, utterly crap. I mean, what did they think? Did they just sit there for 2 days and wrote something as fast as they could, and then just kind of shot it or something? Because
it was a mixture of things,
doesn't it? Yeah,
it was a mixture of things. I mean, it is quite a long story, but the crux of it is they run out of money. The studio pulled the funding for it. The standing set that had been built, that sort of future city, had cost them so much. It was all over budget. It was a modest budget anyway. The first one was a pretty modest film.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It all went over budget, and they just pulled the plug. It's okay, whatever you've got, whatever you've shot, that's what we're going to make something releasable from. So it was always unfinished business to the director. It wasn't what he intended. And a lot of the alien stuff was sort of cobbled together and switched around as well. A lot of it was done not on Mulcahy's watch. And I gather he's still quite salty about it today, because I don't know if his career ever really recovered. He made The Shadow and a few things afterwards, John, but I can't swear that I've seen much by him.
No, and I think that Highlander 2, there was scarring for me with that one, but I then went back to watch. I then enjoyed the series, as well.
I couldn't get into that.
It was great.
Reason. Did you? I couldn't get into it.
I need to go back to it. I think they're all on Amazon Prime at the moment.
Do you know why I couldn't get into it? Because it just looked really cheap and nasty as chips. Do you know what I mean? It really did. And
it was a very cheap show. Yeah, it definitely was. But one thing I did like about the 90s and the explosion of, particularly when we got cable TV in Britain, was that a lot of those cheap and cheerful action shows like La Femme Nikita, they were all of a sudden, they were within our reach. They were there. We could find these shows tucked away on some cable channel or another, and all these kind of low rent heroes that all existed on hillsides and in alleyways and various places like that, in these cheap as chips formulaic shows. They became kind of heroes of mine as well, because I liked what they do and how they did it, and the spirit of fun that surrounded it all and them all.
I did. Do you know what? Right. I did. I can see why Texas Walker became quite successful, because it really was a comfortable glove to put on, a comfortable pair of shoes, because he did the same thing every week. He'd come in, he'd beat the crap out of someone, the end. He'd come in, beat the crap out of someone, the end. You know what I mean? And the same thing with Summer Ho as well. When he did that show, Martial Law, it was the same thing. He'd come in, beat the crap out of someone, and then Hercules was a different story though, wasn't it? I mean, I did like it and until Xena started happening. I thought Xena was so much better than Hercules. I've
never really seen Hercules, but as I understand it, there was a humorous undertone to it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Did you watch Andromeda as well?
No, I know he was in it, but I didn't catch it.
I mean, that was. I started watching Andromeda because it was like, oh well, Star Trek's not on tonight and Stargate's not on tonight. It was Andromeda night.
It was that kind of show where you watched it if there was nothing else on, if it was in mid-seasons in between something else. But when you think about it, when I look back to this time, it was perfect timing, in particular for Chuck Norris, because he wanted to. I think his star had sort of fallen a little, but he was still a very revered cult figure. And then this show gave him sort of stability and an icon all of his own, when a lot of the other action heroes who'd superseded him had also fallen by the wayside. So it was perfect timing, absolutely brilliant. And it leads me really nicely into the first topic of conversation on this show, because when I look back to Walker Texas Ranger and I think, is there a modern equivalent? I know there is a modern Texas Ranger apparently, but in my view, the show that is a lot like this but takes it on several steps is Reacher.
Oh,
Ian.
yes.
So I've taken your advice. I meant to get on it anyway. Don't get me wrong. I have started. I've made a good start on Reacher season 2 on Amazon Prime. I've watched 2 episodes of it already, and I'm absolutely loving it.
Well, the reason why Reacher is actually the Night Watchman. I think it's Night Watchman and Reacher. They're kind of very similar. People are desperate now for testosterone. Am I saying that word wrong? Probably wrong.
That's the kind of car. You want to go for that again? You mean testosterone? Don't you?
That's what I mean. But you can keep that in. I don't care. But what I'm saying is that they want to see, stuff like they want to see a hero be a hero and be a man.
Yeah.
And they want to see that stuff. Even women want to see this stuff. And they, the girls I know that watch Reacher, my friends, they think he's great. They think he's awesome. Even they love his build. And there was one scene in it where he was cleaning up and he had his shirt off. And I think one of my friends, I think Sarah, was going on about how four he was. So I think this is what people want, and that's why it's such a huge hit. And it is really well written, really well performed, and the action's great in it as well. So that's what I think. That's the reason why I think it's
even reading the blurb of this up on Amazon makes you want to jump out of a window, John, or leap from a moving car. It says when retired military police officer Jack Reacher is arrested for a murder he did not commit, he finds himself in the middle of a deadly conspiracy full of dirty cops, shady businessmen, and scheming politicians. And in this one, he's investigating, isn't he, the death of one of his old service mates from when he was in the army. The killer is picking them off one by one, all the members of this sort of crack unit that Reacher was the head of. So there's a lot of intrigue there, isn't it, that follows on from what we got in season 1. Did you watch season 1 of this show?
I've watched season 1. I haven't watched season 2 yet, but I'm hearing such good things about season 2. But season 1, similar to what you just said, it was a breath of fresh air, because I was sick of, we've got to have this representation. That this was just an old school, let's punch it out show that you could enjoy, and switch off for an hour. And we need more like this, don't we? And I think I saw last week that they said that season 2 of Reacher is the most successful show that Amazon have had.
Yes, it is. It is.
I mean, that's everything you need to know, doesn't it?
Yeah. And this is what people want to see. It's crazy, right?
100%. And I hope people listen to it. The data that they must know that these shows are popular, because when you've had a long day at work, you want escapism, don't you? You just want to switch off and go, right, let's enjoy this show.
You want to see some enormous dude just busting some heads.
Yeah, that's great. Look at
that. Yeah, that's me when I've forgotten my keys, Dan.
Well, this kicks off within about 2 minutes of episode 1. This has already gone down. So because I started watching this and I thought, I had this fear that it was not going to deliver on season 1, because stuff like The Witcher didn't, and various other shows don't. Things that I really enjoyed first time out tend to have a habit of letting me down for the second season. Yeah. But I think that they realise that there's a section of the audience that may feel that way, may be worried about such a thing, such a phenomena happening again. And so you get this scene within 2 minutes of episode 1 starting, and you think, everything's going to be absolutely fine with this. And Alan Ritchson, who plays Jack Reacher, he's just as good. In fact, he's probably even better in this second season. I don't know whether it's confidence in the role, Ian, because it must have been quite intimidating for him to take this on, because obviously Tom Cruise had played it before in a couple of movies that hadn't done badly, but they weren't that popular, generally speaking. And the books are so successful, aren't there? There's like 30 of these things.
I think the difference between the Tom Cruise version and this version, I'm not going to quote the obvious, obviously. Am I, about how tall he is?
3 foot.
But,
3 foot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think with Tom Cruise, he was more of a detective, more of a really clever detective. Yeah. If you watch those, especially the first Jack Reacher movie, all the things that he says make sense. Like about how very little time the police showed up when he fought those 3 guys and stuff like that. He kept saying these things, and it was quite clever. I think in this one he's like that, but he's not as super clued up as the Tom Cruise version of Reach, in my opinion, because obviously I can't remember the girl's name. There's two girls, the one with the dark hair and the black girl. They come up with good stuff as well, don't they? They say, oh, what about so and so, and he keeps saying, I know there was a reason why I keep you around, Neely, and stuff. Like, keeps saying that, doesn't he? So, but with Tom Cruise, no one ever got to shine when he was detecting, wasn't he? He kind of he was always the first man. Yeah. So but that's the difference. But also, this guy's huge.
I remember him when he was in Teen Titans on Netflix.
Yeah, he was great in that as well.
Yeah, he was, and
he's Hawk, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. And he did well there, but he's really stepped it up with Reacher, isn't he? It's a knockout show, isn't it? Excuse the pun.
Yeah, it's probably the role that he's been waiting for. But of course, the big drawback here is, Alan Richardson, he's 41 now. There's nearly 30 of these books. Is he going to be making these? If they do a season a year, he's going to have to be making them into his 70s. So it's unlikely that they're ever going to film them all, which means I'm never going to get all of these stories unless I read some of them. I forget that I'm going to age in the meantime, Ian. I see that doesn't seem to register with me at all.
Just got an image of him now in a Zimmer frame, just coming along with a shotgun, you know.
Well, I know someone that's a huge fan of Jack Reacher and has read all the novels, even the new ones, and he said that there's a lot that's really bad that really shouldn't be made into a film, but there are a lot that should be. So I'm assuming they're just picking the best ones, the good ones, because this one I think is it number 8 book? I can't remember.
I have no idea.
It's number 8 or something like that. But yeah, so they're not going, in chronological order. They're literally picking out. It's like James Bond, isn't it? They pick out the films that they think is going to make a good movie. Lee Charles, I don't know if that's his real name. He used to be in the army, didn't he? The guy that wrote this, and he kept saying that he wanted a hero to equal the heroes that were on screen. So that's what he's.
I believe that he's British as well. Also, I think I read it somewhere that when he wrote the very first Jack Reacher book, he'd never even been to America.
Imagine if they got hold of this during the 80s, it would probably be Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Jack Reacher, wouldn't it?
Can you imagine? So that's an interesting question, isn't it? Who would have played Jack Reacher in an 80s action movie based on the same books? If they'd been written then, who would you have cast as Jack Reacher back in the day? Let us know here at the Spacebook in the comments section. And whilst you're at it, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the cloister bell to get all the notifications. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far, but I'm surprised to see the delivery pattern in. It's really, really strange how they're trotting this out. So finishes on January the 19th, so it's not that far away. There's only 8 episodes in this season. But yeah, to start and to drop 3 on the one day in one big chunk, I don't think I've ever really seen that before. I know that Netflix do some of their shows in halves, don't they, like Stranger Things, but they tend to, it's like they drop 6 and then another 6 rather than 3 and then 1. Very, I suppose it makes sense to somebody, John.
Do you know, I saw something last week that might be the reason they do it, and this was more towards Disney. With Nielsen, for streaming services in the US, they get recorded on the number of minutes watched. So what they craftily do is they'll put more episodes together on a launch, so they can say, we got X number of people watching it, these minutes are being viewed, so it looks like they're really higher up in the ratings than they are, and then they go to the weekly format. So that might be what they're doing.
It does make sense though, if you think about it, doesn't it? Because if the first episode's really good, then you're just going to go, I'm going to watch the next one. And then after the next one, you're going to, I'm going to watch the next one. So minutes watched, it makes sense, I guess. Yeah.
Something's going to make sense somewhere along the way. You know, it definitely doesn't make sense to me, guys. Star Wars. Yeah, a galaxy far, far away used to be so simple. Now, Ian, when we last spoke about this, we were in the wake of some brand new Star Wars news that had got neither of us excited. And then everything really changed quite quickly. I don't think I've ever seen a high-profile movie get announced one day, hit the skids so quickly, and then seem to get turned around also in record time. So they announced, didn't they, sometime in the middle of last week, a movie believed to be called Star Wars New Jedi Order. And it's going to be directed by a woman called Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy. Here she is with Daisy Ridley, who plays Rey Skywalker, Palpatine, whatever you want to call it. So they released this, and this news went down like a lead balloon, mostly because, well, for a number of factors, really. Nobody particularly likes this character. No offense, Daisy. I think she's probably quite nice, but nobody likes this character. Nobody wants this story at all, realistically. Nobody's interested. And then they installed a director who is deliberately adversarial with the target audience for the entire franchise. So anticipation it all just instantly dropped. Now, I made the declaration I certainly wasn't going to be following Star Wars anymore as a topic of conversation, John, that I was all out of any kind of interest whatsoever. So I did feel a bit of a hypocrite when the next bit of news flickered into existence, because within 48 hours of that getting a universal sort of what they call clap back, they announced another movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is apparently going to be directed by Jon Favreau, and it's going to take place after season 4 of The Mandalorian. Could you keep track of what was going on with this? Where do you think this has come from?
First of all, I'm like you. I'm only keeping an eye on it now, as like you would on a car accident. As you drive past, you have a quick look, because I made my peace with Star Wars. It's terrible now, and literally when they announced her, there was a massive backlash of it, because you had all the World Economic videos that came out and what she'd said and how she hates men, and all of that came out. And then
what was taken out of context, though. You do realize that, don't you?
Well, the clips that they'd got were from about 6 or 7 years ago when she was at a kind of conference. But having said that, there were additional quotes where she pretty much did double down on everything she'd said 6 or 7 years ago. So yes, but no.
The thing that threw me about it was when she made the comment about, along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's about time a woman took control of the Star Wars universe. And I'm thinking, what's happened for the last 10 years?
Wasn't that the whole point? That silly photo of Kathleen Kennedy and other people. In fact, they were all women, weren't they?
Yeah.
All wearing T-shirts saying the Force is female and holding lightsabers or whatever they were doing. What was all that? I'm sure that happened.
And you go back to the very first Star Wars films, and you had Marcia Lucas, who was heralded as effectively being heavily involved in saving the film due to the editing.
Didn't she edit it? Yeah.
Yeah, and then 24, 48 hours later, they clearly were trying to backpedal, weren't they? And then they announced, Jon Favreau and to direct this film. And even when you look at the image they put up, it looks like a rushed image. There's a small little statement from Favreau about it, and they clearly haven't even got anything ready to go or a script as yet. But they just don't know what they're doing, do they, at the moment?
I think they were clearly surprised by the reaction to that
how
news.
Could they be
how
surprised?
Negative it was.
How
could they have thought that it was a viable prospect in the first place, mate? It's extraordinary. So they've now said that the new Star Wars movie that will feature Rey will happen, but it seems that they're walking back the 2026 expected kind of announced release date, and it's come to light that there's no script actually exists for this film.
I think they generally think they're going to change the world with this attitude, and I don't think it's a good attitude at all. I think it's very it's very bad. It's what they're trying to do is they don't even know what they're doing. What they're doing is very bad to try and change the world, and it's not going to work because a lot of people are waking up now with all this nonsense about Disney. So I don't know, mate. I don't understand the logic at all behind this at all, but
well, it's like the Ahsoka series. I'll be honest, I really enjoyed Star Wars Rebels a few years back.
Yes, the cartoon, right?
Show. Really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed Clone Wars, but I was the first to think I can't see that working in live action, and they kind of pushed into that. And I remember Kathleen Kennedy saying something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing again, when they came to announce they were going to do Force Awakens and whatnot. She made a comment saying Marvel have got all this rich back history to draw on. We haven't got that. And yet everyone knew you had the expanded universe novels going back
scores of books and comics. And
now they're starting to try and adapt those expanded universe novels because they've got themselves into a hole but they're doing it with different characters, which just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, you know, Ian's right. They're trying to push this narrative.
It is.
Yeah, and it's only going to fail, and I'm just happy to watch them burn now.
It's funny because
in itself,
all they want to do is destroy the male characters in Star Wars and even in Marvel. Nobody likes Rey.
Yeah. But it would seem to suggest to me the timing of it, John, was very suspicious. As I say, because I'd muted it, I just got to the place where seriously I didn't want to read another thing about Star Wars. I wasn't interested or invested anymore. It may as well be as out of sight as it is out of mind.
Yeah.
So I don't know how quickly it turned around. But to see that announcement of a Mandalorian movie, what you were just saying, Ian, because The Mandalorian, when this series first started, in particular, cut a classically heroic figure, didn't he? The Star Wars roots in the Western have never been showing more than when The Mandalorian premiered. The first 2 seasons were really, really solid, very enjoyable. They had the proper flavour of the original series and characters that felt completely authentic to that galaxy. It's just everything since that's been awful. So do you think that they've seen that reaction and thought, no, we're going to pivot back here to something, the last thing we had that anybody cared about? And particularly if it's putting something in a cinema, it's one thing to put it on Disney Plus, where people are subscribed to that, or they pay their subscription. You know, they can opt out at any time, I know, but expect people to leave their home and pay ticket entry for seeing something at the cinema at ever inflating prices. They've really got to put their money where their mouth is with this.
They shouldn't make it at all. Also,
which one? Either of them.
Mandalorian, but either of them. The mistake they made with Mandalorian is created this law that the Mandalorians don't take their mask off, which basically for every actor is a nightmare because they won't be noticed as the person. And again, that was true because what's his name? Pascal, whatever his name is, wanted to be seen as the Mandalorian, and there were a few times when they took his helmet off, even to the point now he's not even in a costume, it's just his voiceover. But also another factor about Mandalorian is that they actually pushed him to the side for the other character, the female character, in the last season.
But I think that they pushed Favreau to the side.
They did,
and it was more Filoni because there were more elements of Clone Wars and Rebels that kind of came in, don't get me wrong, there were characters like Cad Bane came in it, he was like a blue bounty hunter sort of guy, and he was a great character, but there was a lot of it that just didn't work. And for me, the biggest mistake they made, because they got greedy, was when Grogu goes at the end of season 2. He should have been gone for quite some time. He should have been with Luke, with the new Jedi temple being built.
I think that The Mandalorian reached a natural conclusion at the end of season 2, and that was the time. If ever there was a time, John, to make a movie, I think it was then, and I think they should have left it 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. There would have been a real appetite by now for a Mandalorian movie. If we'd have been waiting on it now, and they just announced it now, okay, The Mandalorian and Grogu, people would have been chomping at the bit for that. I would be. And whereas at the moment, all I see is I just look at the dates and think, okay, they announced that major shitstorm, then they announced this. Has it turned things around? I mean, have either of you been following it on social media? Has the news of a Mandalorian movie managed to bring anybody back?
Well, I mean, even last year when they did the Star Wars celebration, I think it came out that the views that they got was about 1 million views live for celebration. That's worldwide. It's just because people have just switched off from it now. You get to a bit where it's just apathy, isn't it? You don't hate it. You're just like, it's not for me. I'm going to invest my time somewhere else, because you're probably the same as me. You don't want to hate watch something. You want to watch something you're going to enjoy.
Especially not Star Wars.
Just start again with Star Wars. That's what I think they should do.
The most scandalous thing that they didn't do, that everybody wanted, is when they did The Force Awakens, they should have gone, right, okay, we're going to start it off with Han, Luke, and Leia in the Falcon together. or working together, then you expand from there.
Yeah.
People would be a lot happier with it now, but they didn't.
Kathleen Kennedy put a stop to that.
I think she's fired more directors than she's hired now, isn't she? I think the ratio.
Yeah.
When Filoni took more of a role on The Mandalorian, it's because they'd put Favreau into a kind of godfather role, a creative godfather over multiple series. But it sounds to me that may have actually have either stretched him too far, or it wasn't as autonomous as it would have needed it to be for him to affect real change and to really lead it creatively and distinctively and to give it that sprinkling of what had made The Mandalorian so successful when it first premiered.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And I think the one thing, first time I noticed there was something not quite right was when the Boba Fett series came out.
Oh, God, yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, and that wasn't Boba Fett.
Me.
I mean, when you saw Boba Fett turn up in season 2, and he's just badass, and I'm like, this is what I want to see from Boba Fett, you know. And then literally that series when we had the multicolored mopeds and you know all of that, and then we had a weird thing where we had a Mandalorian episode in the middle of the Boba Fett episode.
Yeah, we did.
Series, and it was like it's almost like a clash of two people. I felt it was very peculiar, and that's when it kind of started going downhill, didn't it?
It was impossible for fans to remain invested in that, I think, Ian. Fans got whiplash from it. They believed they were watching one thing, all of a sudden they're watching another. It was only 6 episodes anyway, and it was very, very confusing.
I think Kathleen Kennedy, if she's the one in charge, because we really don't know, really, she is stubborn. She's incredibly stubborn to the point. In fact, everyone that's in charge in Star Wars, they're stubborn to the point that they are determined to shove this kind of religion down our throats and make it a normality. That's what they're trying to do. And if we all stand firm and don't give them our money, sooner or later, BlackRock is going to run out of money. Maybe not, who knows? But sooner or later, they run out of money and they'll give us proper Star Wars. But that's the theory. I don't know. The thing that the people that are in charge of Star Wars should do and has to do is basically stand up on a podium, have the press there and say, we are really sorry that we've screwed Star Wars. We're going to pretend that all the stuff that we've made in the past does not exist and we're starting again. If they said that, the whole world will share, right? And then they'll, focus on trying to make a proper Star Wars film. And when they release it, they'll get their billions and millions and trillions back. They would. But they're so stubborn and they're so arrogant that they're not going to do that until the last penny is drained from their bank account and they can't make any more. That's probably what's going to happen.
It's only ever when they run out of other people's money to burn that you get anything approaching change with any of these things. As I say, I'm really quite sad that I'm not excited even about a Mandalorian movie. And it hasn't moved me to unmute the words that I muted last week. I still remain where I am, completely annexed from Star Wars. When a film is... Because I don't even think any of these films are going to get made. I to be honest, with the Mandalorian one, I believe that when I see it. Never mind.
Placeholder, isn't it?
Other, New Jedi Order. I mean, what is that? That sounds like a really iffy platform console game.
And what I'll probably do is I'll recast... And I'll probably cast people to play Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Princess Leia to actually redo that. And
I have no issue with that.
Probably I would do that, but
you see, if it was any other time and none of this was being put into the shows, I'd be saying to all movies, I'd be saying to them, right, go back thousands of years in the past and do the Old Republic. Because the Old Republic was fantastic, and you
could do that,
great villain, and you could do it. But now I just think,
the reason why you can't do that now is because the brand itself is so far in the toilet. It's practically disappeared down the U-bend that to get it back, they would have to do something really, really drastic and almost unthinkable, just as you describe, I think.
You know what, right? I think what they should do is forget about the Empire, forget about the Rebels, forget about the Jedis, and create something new that exists in the Star Wars world. If I was in charge, the first thing I would do is commission a Han Solo and Lando Calrissian a series that happened before they met Leia and Luke. That's what I would do, because the imagination that went through my head, the stories that went through my head in the second Empire Strikes Back when they first met. What have you done to my ship? You know what I mean? You know, where have you been, scoundrel? Blah, blah, blah. My imagination went wild. What did they do in the past? How did they get the ship? How did Chewbacca meet him and all that
the
nonsense?
way the two actors played it as well. Could you stand now, Ian? Bear in mind that we had the Solo movie. We've got Alden Ehrenreich and Donald Glover, who played Han Solo and Lando Calrissian. Both of them, you don't think either of them cut the mustard. There's nothing that can be salvaged there if you put them in something that was really well written, really tight.
Both of them was miscast. You got to admit, that guy didn't play him like any. He didn't play him like Han Solo at all. I mean, mind you, the writing was terrible, and the guy.
I think it was the writing. When I've only ever watched that movie once.
He looks nothing like him though. And he doesn't have the swagger. He doesn't have what.
Neither of them do, really.
John,
do you know what appealed to me about that movie? Woody Harrelson's character.
He was good. Yeah, I liked Woody Harrelson.
I thought I could easily do a Disney series with Woody Harrelson's, like a prequel of his, you know, a road.
But he died.
You see what I'm saying, though, can't you? They couldn't make a series or a movie with Lando and Han Solo with Harrison Ford and Billy D. Williams. Now, guys in their 80s, so you would have to recast it.
Yes. So what they can do is, there is an actor called Anthony Gruber who looks like Harrison Ford. He was in the film. I can't remember what that film was called. The one with the woman that didn't grow old. Yeah, you know the one I mean.
Mary Poppins.
No. What's her name? Blake Lively played her.
I know.
Forever. Is it called Forever or something like that? And there's a scene in it where Harrison Ford's character meets her in the 40s, and her car breaks down, and they got this guy named Anthony Gruber that looked like Harrison Ford. He really did look like Harrison Ford. So obviously it's before the digital thing, whatever, but you know, you cast someone that actually look like them.
Do they not cast because I remember this guy, and I remember the fans going mad and saying, you have to cast this man as Han Solo. So do you think they don't cast people like that, partly because the fans get so invested in the idea?
The guy
is that not even on their radar?
No, the guy that played Harrison Ford was a friend of someone's, I was told, and that's why they cast him. He was a friend of Kathleen Kennedy or Kathleen
That's right, Alden Ehrenreich,
something like that. Yeah, I
believe he is sort of second generation Hollywood family. He's proper in the loop with. I actually thought he was okay. I thought Donald Glover was okay, and I think they could both possibly work if they'd got the material, but by the same measure, I know that they could definitely have cast both of those parts a lot better, because I don't think Donald Glover was anything like Billy D. Williams either. Just being black isn't going to be good enough just because he's got the same skin color. Other than that, he's completely different.
But watch it. You got a feeling that Lando was a ladies' man, right? And if you take that out of Lando Calrissian's character, he's not Lando.
It would be like The Sting or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but set in the Star Wars universe.
Yes. It's that simple.
Itself.
Exactly. It's that simple. I don't understand why they're not doing it. Sorry, John.
What took me out of that Solo movie as well is the fact that when you're saying about they want to push all this stuff in there, is that Phoebe What's-her-name's droid in it just took me out of it every single time. It must be so frustrating to be a director assigned to a movie at a Marvel or a Lucasfilm, because the amount of interference you must have on a daily basis, it's just beyond the pale.
But it must be really difficult for someone that gets launched into a Marvel thing, and he comes in with the greatest of intentions, and then suddenly he's slapped with another version of the script, and then he's slapped with another actor that's been replaced. Then he's told that he can't do this and he can't do that, and he's told he can't direct the action sequences because we've got a dedicated team to do that. And the question is, he's just standing there going, well, maybe I should just take the check then and just do exactly what they say. And that's the majority of them. That's what they do now. It is a real shame.
It's making movies by committee now, not by
one
vision.
person.
Yeah.
We need some sense and reason back in the equation. We need somebody to come along who's going to whip the force into shape, don't we? And show Kathleen Kennedy the door, give her what for, and creatively take the reins of Star Wars and give us the film that we've always wanted. Sadly, Freddie Mercury is dead.
Brilliant.
But who knows? Someone else may present themselves. What was it? May come forward, as they like to say. Has come forward. A woman has come forward. What does it mean? It doesn't really matter for me whether it's a woman, whether it's a tub of margarine. I don't really care. The idea is somebody who's remotely competent, ideally could make a decent Star Wars movie. It is that simple. With Star Wars going completely off the boil and them running around like headless chickens like that, I don't think they've even got any TV shows coming after the Acolytes. So that's all going south.
They need
you would think
now.
well, exactly. But you would think that if anybody can bring some decorum to proceedings out there in space, it would be the officers of the Federation, the United Federation of Planets there on Star Trek with their rules and regulations. There won't be any nonsense going on in that fictional universe, will there? Surely.
That's even worse.
Well, sort of, because they've announced, yet again, a new Star Trek movie this week. I don't know, did you see this? So this is a new film, again from Bad Robot and Paramount, that's been announced this week. It's going to be directed by a gentleman called Toby Haynes, who has directed several episodes of the Star Wars show Andor.
God, no.
Well, at least that looked quite good. It did.
No,
it's the best looking
rubbish.
of the shows. It was sort of cinematic. I'm not necessarily put off by that, but yeah, he's been hired to come in on this. But they've announced it's going to be a prequel to the J.J. Abrams 2009 Star Trek movies, set decades before then. So it's going to be a prequel to a prequel of a prequel. So that's apparently it's from a script. It's from a script that they've got from Seth Grahame-Smith, and it's described as just an expansion of the Kelvin timeline, and it will be the final chapter in that set of films. So none of this makes any sense. None of it lines up. How can it be the final chapter when it's going to be taking place decades before, for a start? So presumably it's not going to star the same people. No. There's that. Then there's this recurring problem that Star Trek has got with prequels. You got this terrible title, Star Trek Origins, is the title that they've put out there so far.
Yeah, but Star Trek Origins is now.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going into space. It's now. So was it going to be a load of people buying a Starbucks? It's just silly, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what they should do with Star Trek? They should literally forget about the Kelvin timeline and make proper Star Trek. They should carry on after Generations, the movie, or whatever one was the last one. And they should carry on with new characters, maybe aboard the Enterprise. I do not know. And they should carry on doing the adventures. That's what they should do. You know what I would do, though? I know. I would do. I would hire someone huge, like a big star, to play the captain of this new Enterprise, whatever. I would hire. You know who would hire? I'd like to hire Robert De Niro, because he's the right age. He's old. Do you know what I mean? I want him to be in charge of a new Enterprise. That would be amazing.
The problem they've got with Star Trek movies is that they don't really, even though they had aspirations to turn it into a blockbuster franchise that would go alongside Paramount's other properties. So they've got the Transformers, which was a mega blockbuster series, and they got Mission Impossible 2, which was also becoming, it's arguably still a big blockbuster series. They own Star Trek as well, and they believe they could do the same with that. But the problem was, these films, none of them actually, when you look into it, none of them made any money. The last one that was released came out in 2016. That was Star Trek Beyond, an unbelievable nearly 8 years ago. And that was quite modestly budgeted compared to the others. But even that didn't make its money back. It turns out that Star Trek 2009, as we call it, that wasn't actually that financially successful either. But all of these actors that were attached to it, well, most of them have gone on to have pretty big careers.
The key, Dan, is to do what they did with Star Trek 2 or Star Trek 3, where basically they scaled down the story. Like, for instance, with Star Trek 2, right, they used the same set for the Reliant as well as the Enterprise. and they had other sets as well. And I believe Star Trek 2 was like 12 million or something like that, or someone started. Obviously, if you get a big star to play the captain, say for instance Robert De Niro, and you get him in, that's the only star you'd pay for. Everything else will be scaled down to a point. Even the story will be scaled down to a point that it's about the story and it's about what's happening, and keep it contained. And that's what they did with every Star Trek film. With
it's such a tough balance, isn't it? Because when you do that so often, you can't do that in a cinematic way.
They did it with what you call it, Wrath of Khan, the third Star Trek film.
It was 42 years ago, though.
Yeah, I know, but you can still do that.
What they did in the 80s was motion picture. They went over budget.
Over budget, yeah.
And then what they did is they decided at Paramount that they would go, right, we'll get the TV production crew to do the Star Trek movies. And they did it at a fraction of the price that it cost motion picture. So they put the films out, and they were decent films, but they made their money back. And I think, you know, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I watched a couple of weeks ago, I think Robert Mayer Burnett was saying about the fact they need to get back to doing these sort of films for $100 million.
They need to be making
more than that. Yeah,
they need to be making them cheaper, and if they can't afford those actors, and something's got to give somewhere along the way, and they've got to accept the cold hard fact that Star Trek isn't actually a blockbuster franchise. After all, it hasn't got that kind of appeal, or at least if you morph it. I think if you manipulate it and knead it that much, it becomes something else. It's not Star Trek anymore because it loses, it loses the cerebral aspect to it, because it's proper science fiction in a way that Star Wars
I think
never was, never should be.
Yeah, but I think you can do it. I think you can. I think yes, you need a star to sell the movie, right? But also, as I said, if the story is constructed to a point where it's contained, right, like Wrath of Khan, like Undiscovered Country, with just enough adventure in it, just enough. You can put unknowns in there, but obviously you need a couple of stars to sell the movie, so it'll go through the market and sell around the world and stuff like that. It can be done with good writing, good direction, and obviously good special effects, which comes cheap now with computer technology and stuff like that. They can do it.
Maybe they should have a word with, or give it to the people who make. And what was that company got? Like A24, who make, because all these horror movies that have now been quite stripped back, and that they seem to be able to make very effective, chilling horror movies now that get people talking. And horror fans are quite demanding. They're a demanding crowd. They don't just accept anything. I mean, there are some people who just like the schlock, but proper horror fans, they won't just accept anything. And there's a couple of production companies, not just A24, that have produced a series of reasonably budgeted films, starring, as you said, Ian, actors that at least you've heard of. They've been able to entice real talent into it because they're strong. They're strong stories. They're tightly made. There's a handle on the finances. So maybe if the people who looked at that could look at Star Trek, then we may get something that's enough in the middle of being cerebral and yet be worthy of being on a big screen. That's maybe where they should go. And you would think that Bad Robot, who, to the best of my knowledge, John, they've not had any major cinema success.
You want someone to take it back. You know, my personal preference for someone to take over Star Trek, without a doubt, is Ronald D. Moore, because I'm a big fan of Ronald D. Moore, and you know, I'm currently watching and I'm catching up with For All Mankind at the moment, and it is superb. And what he did with Galactica is great, but he knows Star Trek inside.
He's the guy. He's sort of Star Trek's Favreau, really, on paper. He's the guy they should go back to, who, as you say, understands it, knows it inside out, who's got this track record. Since Deep Space Nine ended, he's gone off and run other really successful shows, both in genre and outside of genre. So this is a man who is seasoned and can do pretty much anything, and he knows Star Trek inside out. So why they haven't gone to him, and I hate to say it, I think he's more than capable. I think that Robert Meyer Burnett should actually be involved in something like this creatively, I'm sure.
The thing is, though, I think
knowledge,
sorry, I think you're absolutely right, Dan. You know, Moore would make a really good showrunner, or even to write the screenplay for a movie and stuff like that. I think the reason why
I think he turned Star Trek around in
he would
in
he
9
would.
to 12 months as an operation.
I think the reason why, obviously, we know the reason why Bad Robots and they've got it is because of contractual things, because they're under contract and they have to give it to them for whatever. But us three, we all know the route they're going down is completely, utterly wrong.
Yeah.
For what they're trying to, if they want Star Trek back, should forget about in my opinion, of course, they should forget about the Kelvin timeline and go back to the original timeline and carry on from there. In my opinion, that's what they should do. And forget about this prequel to the prequel. Let's just get some Star Trek on.
So overcomplicated. They insist that they're going to be making this Section 31 TV movie with Michelle Yeoh. No. Again, I'm very fond of Michelle Yeoh. I think a lot of people our generation are. A lovely actress. Is always very watchable.
Yeah. The thing is, when you watch Deep Space Nine and you see Section 31 pop up, it's brilliant. It's well written. It's engaging. They have got no talent or ability to make a Section 31 movie very good. No. And what you're talking about, where they're talking about this prequel now, I find with them, they don't even come up with original ideas. They just copy and paste stuff that's already been done. Yeah. And Enterprise, the original concept for Enterprise was going to be the right stuff for space, where it was going to be the whole first season. They wanted to do it. The ship hasn't gone yet. It's all about putting the crew together.
Oh, was that the original concept?
That was the original concept, apparently.
That's why they had the song, didn't they?
Yeah. And I've got the feeling they just go through and they just skim and nick ideas.
Yeah. All the public really want of this scene is as pretty much as you described, that original concept of a Western in space, a captain on a bridge, out there sort of righting wrongs, standing up for the little people, some political and social commentary in there somewhere that works. That's absolutely viable with Star Trek. And to say something about the human condition, and ideally with a fist fight and some bug-eye, it's just a bit of everything in there. All those constituent parts that people associate when you think of Star Trek, and all those images that came up on the end credits of the original series underneath the names of the production personnel. You want bang, bang, bang. Yeah. You want a rush of that kind of thing. And it needn't be expensive at all. I think all this talk that this new one, Star Trek Origins, is going to fit. They've got it listed as saying it's going to take place in the late 22nd, early 23rd century. People hear stuff like that, and most people couldn't give a flying F when it's said. As long as it's recognizably Star Trek, and there's a guy in a gold top, or a maroon if you're Patrick Stewart, a guy in a gold top, holding a gun or holding the tricorder, out there doing the thing, talking to the guy with the pointy ears, trying to crack off with the green bird. That's what people want, and this has become so diluted. They have to bring it back. To that. And I say that in the wake of Picard season 3, which was outstanding, but it was also very firmly the end of something very precise. It's almost in its own little bubble. It doesn't mean that the problems with the rest of the IP have magically gone away. Terry Matalas, I believe that Terry could turn it around. Hi, Terry, if you're watching. Terry does watch the show.
And he did a great job.
He could do it. And but then they don't seem to have any inclination to ask him. And I would surprise me if somebody else has snapped him up. I mean, he delivered that season with such aplomb. I would say that he's probably onto something else by now. I'd like to think he is.
I mean, that final season was superb. Sorry, and that final season was superb. But then when you watch the end credits of that final season, they've already set it up that they could go forward if they wanted to go forward.
Yeah, it's seeded, isn't it?
Yeah, but
it's not essential. It'll be if none of that's ever picked up on, it will still stand as a feasible. Ending,
but the reason why it's not going our way, it's not happening, is because of these people and their religion. Basically, they're stopping all what's supposed to be done. Again, they're stubborn people. They're stubborn to the point where they're just absolutely crazy, and it's because of this blockage. This is the reason why Terry Matalas is not being offered the Star Trek movie, because he'd be totally capable of moving it forward from any point. Right, and more, as you mentioned, That's the reason
you know
why.
what, Ian, you're right. I mean, when I look back at Picard season 3, some of that was very cinematic, and I know that he didn't make that show single-handed.
Yeah,
but it was very much his vision.
it's absolutely
I think we can safely say, and with a heavy heart, because I enjoyed all 3 of these movies, that Star Trek Beyond should really stand as the end point for the Cole Kelvin timeline.
Yeah.
It's just too late. I don't think... I understand that the characters love playing the parts, and they probably do want to play them again. I mean, I'm certain they like the work, but I think that it did come with certain expectations. It's probably been simply too long now, and the whole brand is in a totally different place than it was in 2016, let alone in 2008, 2009. I think you're right. It is time to look at Star Trek again.
Paramount's up for sale at the moment as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Scrap the movies, get someone in who understands Star Trek, do some great series for a few years, rebuild the brand because it's been damaged like Star Wars has, and then you can announce about movies from there.
Well, I think that's what they've been trying to do since 2017. I think that's what they've been trying to build to.
Yeah.
It's just we've had the same problem. What we talked about earlier on with Star Wars, a similar story has been happening in television with Star Trek. Most of those shows have had a revolving door of showrunners. People haven't been able to be left in the chair to really mark any of these shows out as having a personality of their own. I think Strange New Worlds was really getting there in its first season. Arguably, despite a couple of strong episodes in season 2, it has undoubtedly floundered, and that was their best shot so far. So if that's so I think really, and as much as I'd like to think, I'd like to think that season 3 could pull it around. There's still a lot of potential in Strange New Worlds. I don't think it would be the end of the world if Paramount was bought up and all this just stopped, and somebody with a lot of clout, a big clipboard, came in, started giving some people their cards and saying, okay, let's look at Star Trek completely again. I thought that woman was going to do it, who they parachuted in about 2 years ago. It looked quite exciting that she was going to start busting some heads and making some changes. And I believe that she was the one who championed Strange New Worlds, but it's simply 10 episodes of half-decent Star Trek simply isn't good enough.
Did you know there are like huge stars that are huge fans of Star Wars? Ben Stiller's a huge fan of Star Trek.
Is he really?
Right? Huge, right? He even brought the Gorn head, right, in an auction. He's such a huge star. Imagine going up to him and say, do you want to be in a Star Trek film? He would just say yes.
Yeah.
And also, as another surprise, Eddie Murphy is a freaking huge fan of the Star Trek OG and the Star Trek movies. If you ask
he was going to be, was going to be in Star Trek 4, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And there's lots.
And Christian Slater. Christian Slater's a huge fan of. Imagine, you ask them and you say, right, well, we can't pay you a lot, but they probably say, yeah, I'll do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Talking, if we're going to bring this sort of full circle here, and was talking about huge Star Trek fans, they could. Is there still room to just go back to Quentin Tarantino?
Well, Quentin wants.
He was
to do
so
something,
keen.
He wants to do something that's kind of not right, in my opinion. He wants to do a piece of the action, but he wants to set it in the 60s. So I don't know if that's going to work.
Well, I don't think that was necessarily his entire vision.
I know. Some of it.
I got the impression that was an aspect of what he wanted to do. But now that's getting on for a good 5 or 6 years ago. And I know that Tarantino said that he only intends on making 10 films.
Yeah.
And even when stars are really invested in the idea of playing someone, doing something, getting something made, the window eventually does close, and they simply go off the idea. For example, I would imagine that David Yates has no real interest in making a Doctor Who film anymore because he's moved. It's like 10, 11 years later. And with this, I think with Tarantino, because I do think that the next film, they either do what you say, Ian. They forget about this Origins idea. It just sounds like nobody would give a toss about it.
No one will.
Unless it was cast really it'd have to be cast really cannily. It's not going to succeed. They've got to either do that or go with a kind of auteur kind of character like Tarantino, who's going to do something so distinctive that literally the entire world, the entire cinema-going world will sit up and pay attention and go, what? And just pretty much let him run wild with it. And because that will change. There'll be people who hate it and people who love it and lots of people in between. but it would get everybody talking about Star Trek again, for better or worse. It really, really would.
That you don't need to go down the route of Tarantino, even though Tarantino will make an interesting Star Trek movie. You don't need to go down the route. All you need to do is give the fans what they want. But there is this blockage, as I said, that's stopping what common sense going through.
Yeah.
And so this is the problem that we've got. That's why we're not going to get it unless they all die.
Do you think that Tarantino? Do you think that Tarantino has seen what they've done with the franchise and would now not go near it?
I don't know. I think Tarantino's an interesting filmmaker, but I'm not sure that he's right for Star Trek, to tell you the truth. But you know, who knows? If he said yes, I wouldn't say no. Do you know what I mean?
The trouble you got with Tarantino is the fact that he's always been so good at, he's had the freedom to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
If he's suddenly in a studio where they're giving him notes left, right, and centre,
exactly.
He'll throw his toys out the pram within 5 minutes.
It would. It'd be one of these, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think the question is this actually going to come to anything at all? Is Toby Haynes actually going to get to direct this Star Trek movie, or is he going to go the same way as S.J. Clarkson, Noah Hawley, Adam Shankworth? All of these people have been announced in exactly the same way. They will direct the next Star Trek movie, and then nothing ever happens. Is this just yet more of the same? Step and repeat. Let's know what you think in the comment section. Which of these versions of Star Trek has stimulated you the most? Where do you think they should go? How do you think they should approach this? If they are going to bring it back to the cinema, maybe do what Ian said and take it really, really tight, really quite low budget, think modestly, and just think of Star Trek and try and catapult it forward like that. Or should they bank on some big names? Or are you really set on the idea that they should bring back the cast of the Kelvin timeline? Is that still unfinished business for you? We'd like to hear from you in the comment section with all of that. Definitely. I'll be amazed if any of this comes to pass in Star Trek or Star Wars.
Game now, isn't it? It's take a shot every time the director is announced.
There must be some rays of positivity out there. I understand that you found a brand new show that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, it's not brand new. I discovered it while I was flicking, and this show's called Louder Milk.
Okay.
And, I discovered it. So this was made, I think it was 2021 or something like that. It's 3 seasons have been made. It got cancelled because the company that they were with kind of died, and so it ended in season 3. But I liked it so much, I binge watched the whole of season 2 after watching season 1 and binge watched season 3. And so basically what it's about this guy, I can't remember his first name, Loudermilk, which is him. He's from Office Space. He plays a counselor, or not a counselor, you know, the AA meetings. He plays the guy that's in charge of AA meetings. But the twist is that he tells you how it is. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He tells you, look, you're a fuck up or whatever. And it's very funny. As it goes along, you get to know some of the people that come to the AA meetings and you follow their journey and stuff like that. And it's, for me, it was a breath of fresh air because I was looking for something to laugh at. And this show made me laugh. It's not hilarious, but it's funny. And sometimes it's sad. And Loudermouth always makes observations of things that I always thought to myself, somebody should talk about that, and he does. So Ian,
if it's got a good heart and it gives me a few belly laughs, I'll take that now.
It is. He argues with everyone, Loudermouth, but he's a critic. He used to be a critic of music, and he loves music, and he got drunk and he became an alcoholic, and then he came off it. And then now he counsels people and stuff about the same thing and stuff like that. It's really interesting, really entertaining, sometimes laugh out loud funny. And his character is like House, but not as deep as House, basically. So if I was you, if you've got nothing else better to watch Loudermilk, because it's really entertaining.
Where can people find it again, mate? Which platform is it on?
If it's on Netflix.
How about you, John? Have you got any recommendation this week? Anything specific that you've been binging or you've discovered from the present or the past?
Yeah, what I'm watching at the moment, well, a couple of things. Firstly, I'm watching RoboDoc, which is a documentary on the making of RoboCop, which is
RoboDoc,
great.
okay.
Yeah, it is brilliant. So if you like your movies and you want to see how that was made, I highly recommend it. It's so good.
So it's the making of the original film or the entire, because there were several sequels and a TV show.
Yeah, so it's just the original RoboCop movie, which is really, really good. And then I've gone back to doing the original sort of Buck Rogers in the 25th century. So I'm doing season 1 of that at the moment, which is great. But no, it's RoboDoc is very good. It's I highly recommend it. And then if anybody has never seen Buck Rogers in the 25th century, watch season 1. Just relax to it. Chill out, have a cup of tea, watch Buck Rogers. You will not be disappointed.
So what's the
can't go wrong with the old stuff.
What channel is the RoboCop doc on?
I got it off of Apple.
Right.
And it was about £6, but I did see it. Where it sometimes recommends it via Prime, so I don't know whether it's coming to Prime. And just 20 minutes of seeing that Ed 209 blow that guy away in the conference room. They just talk about that for 20 minutes. It's that good.
They go forensic on that, do they?
They do.
So I suppose it's part of the joy of having that extended time to really go into a film or TV show that you love in particular. For me this week, I'm pushing on with more Reacher. I'm going to try and get caught up. I'm not going to get caught up in the 4 days between now and when the finale's going to drop. But hopefully, I'm not going to be too far behind, because I'd like to have a big chat about the entire season here on the Spacebook. I think this series has got me just as excited as it did when the first season aired. That's a really rare thing in 2024, so I'm not going to take it for granted.
It's good.
And that's us done again. Another week in geek in one form or another. Turns out I said I was never going to talk about Star Wars again. Ended up talking about it for 45 minutes, but it's I think it was worth going at that, because the turnaround was so ridiculous. But let us know what you think in the comments. And about Star Trek too, we want to know what you would do with Star Trek on the big screen, or should they concentrate on the small screen? Do you think it's had its time there and they need to really go back to basics and concentrate on getting a decent show on the TV before they even think about cinema? Or it could be a good get out, couldn't they, for an intellectual property which, even though they seem to be pumping out more content than ever, is arguably in more trouble than ever. It's the strangest predicament to be in, exactly the same as Marvel Studios. Yes, please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check you're still subscribed, and hit the cloister bell to get all our notifications about what we're doing next and when we're doing it. The next conversations that are coming here about more geeky movies, TV, comic books, and whatever else. John, where can people find you on social media if they want to chip in, get back to you on the RoboDoc and about Star Wars and Star Trek and all the other things you're into?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter X at Gallifrey11. And then just find me on Facebook under Jon Youlden. So come say hi if you, as Dan says, you want to geek out on RoboCop stuff.
Interrupts his viewing time. And Ian, you're still on X as well, aren't you?
I'm on X, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram, would you believe? And so is Rebecca Gold on Instagram as well.
You're asking the important questions, aren't you, on X all the time? Teasing people with playful questions, I think. But yeah, Rebecca Gold, that's, as you say, the Instagram account is very creative, isn't it? And there's always lots going on there, behind the scenes footage and things like that. Yeah,
there's behind the scene footage and stuff like that. By the way, right? I mentioned the Netflix. They put out how many people had seen whatever and stuff like that. What is it? The night thingy is number one.
Oh, the night agent.
Night agent's number one. How many people watched it? All the way down the list, all the way down, right? To a reasonable level is Bad Day, a film I directed. And it took more people saw that than some really high class movies. And I'm really chuffed with that. I'm really chuffed. It was on the list. It was on the list. I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Oh my god, it's there!" And it wasn't the last one either. It was in the middle of that list. So I'm really happy.
Come on, everyone, let's get it up the list.
Bad Day, mate.
Thoroughly Thoroughly deserved. I really enjoyed Bad Day.
There
And
you
congratulations on its continued success. I remember when it came to Netflix, how I wouldn't say you were excited. Well, yeah, you seemed sort of shocked and almost dismissive of it. It's like, oh, it's on Netflix, whatever. And but it's obviously doing really, really well, and
it's done
very
well.
richly deserved. Yeah.
There you go. So if you
big
want to watch
platform,
something,
mate.
watch Bad Day. So there you go.
And you can find me on Instagram and X as the Spacebook, wheezing and groaning, ranting and raving about all things geeky, inside and outside of the TARDIS. Don't forget to head over to the Type 40 channel too for all the Doctor Who talk, podcasts and live streams and all manner of other videos and everything. I mean, the Doctor Who universe, it's the Whoniverse is more all over the place than ever. So there's more to talk about than ever, and lots of opinions coming from me and from them when Type 40 Live returns on the 25th of January 2024 for an 8th season. So head over to the Type 40 YouTube channel to make sure that you get all of that. Thank you for such a positive response to these videos. To keep the comments coming, everybody, and keep watching. We'll see you out there somewhere. Bye-bye.